So Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the one that's been pushing that movie and doing his rallies with Malone and all sorts of different people, okay? He said this in January 2020. Robert Kennedy Jr. says Donald Trump has discredited the American experiment and brags that his uncle, JFK, has more streets named after him than the president ever will. Like, how juvenile. This is so juvenile, really. But you know what? This is mob mentality. It is. That's the mind of the mobster mind mentality. It is. It's some turf war, really. And that would make sense. See, the Kennedys have a vested interest in Trump not succeeding at anything, because Trump is about that America will not be a globalist country. And globalism is communism, but on a global level. So just a communist country, which none of us want that. But globalism means the same thing as communism. But JFK, he was all about a lot of government. He was all about a ton of labor unions. He was all about those different layers that I talk about in so many videos, like your associations and unions that I go off on, because all of those organizations, foundations, associations, unions, they serve as fronts, and the illegal activity that's going, they're fronts, and the illegal activity is going on behind them. Okay, so that's why it's totally against our Constitution. But we're not operating under our original Constitution. We haven't been. We haven't been. We're operating under a democracy. We need the democracy to die, because under our constitutional republic, we have more individual freedoms. So we have lost more freedoms because of operating under a democracy. Our founders were never about associations and unions and all, because they're all layers. And what does the mob do? This is the way the mob is able to cover their crimes, is having all these different layers. And what do those layers create? A bunch of red tape for you and I. So the Kennedys would never be really on board with Trump. A lot of people want to say that JFK, the president, when he was in office, that he wanted to go against the mob. Because, see, his dad, Joe Kennedy, went to Sam Giancana, the mobster in Chicago, for help to get his son elected. I mean, that's how Joe Kennedy was not a very good man. He wasn't. He was very controlling. He was all power hungry. In fact, I read something that said the only one that usually was able to keep him under control was Bobby Kennedy. And he just, even once JFK was in office, he wanted control. And it's JFK that brought in more labor unions, expanded all these different foundations, or all your different layers, okay, like your Social Security, and it just creates a bunch of red tape. So, one of the things JFK did was he implemented the Vaccination Assistance Act in 1962. This provided for the vaccination of millions of children against a number of diseases. He expanded Social Security Act so that it improved medical services for disabled children, and established a new project grant program to improve prenatal care for women from low-income families with high risks of mental disability and other birth defects. What I find so creepy is how the left, your politicians, I mean, they, like when I hear Governor Pritzker talk about talking about reproductive health in women, like I just get, oh, you know, like I just, it gives me the creepers. It just does. Like any politician, but especially Pritzker. But it's like, you know what? No, women, you don't want, like, these people, like, tell the politicians, you know what? Leave our reproductive health alone, okay? Thank you. Like, really. Because that's not what they're really interested in anyway. And then the other thing that these same people are always so interested in is disabled children. And it's just creepy. The Great Depression was caused deliberately by your global families, your bloodline for those 13 families. They all made out like bandits, okay, money-wise. But not just there. They made out because the Great Depression caused a bunch of kids to end up homeless and a bunch of orphans on the street. Which your globalists, yes, they for whether it's sacrifice or other reasons, I'll just leave it at that. That's like a smorgasbord for them. And so then JFK and his who preceded him or came after him continued what he was doing, which was creating the juvenile delinquency program, which then brings in your DCFS systems, your Department of Family Service or Department of Children and Family Services that take people's kids. Okay, this is how you get these organizations that get too powerful, and yes, they're at the state level, but it was all from the federal, and the federal and the state work together with those programs, and yet I worked in the DCFS system. It was my very first nursing job. Trust me, the state is the worst guardian for these kids because that's who the guardian is. So just think about it. Your globalists who have been controlling everything have access to all those kids. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. does talk about that in his book about Fauci. But see, his back's against the wall, like many of these people. So they're going to tell you some truths. The problem is they're not telling you all of the truth, which really the concern here is not these. It's not. It's the protocols in the hospital, but I don't think these are the thing to be worried about. It should be more concerning that Kennedy's not coming clean about the trafficking, because the trafficking, it may have been going on before the Great Depression, but the Great Depression allowed it to excel because of having so many orphans. And these kids end up broken. It's just horrible. And they don't go into a nurturing system whatsoever. It's the opposite of that. And then who rounds up most of those kids? Oh, it's your Catholic Charities orphanages. Yes. And you know who the first president was that was Catholic? JFK. And look at how Catholicism has exploded. Just saying, Catholic Charities is no good. I worked in it. But again, it's just another organization that's a front for those mobsters. That is truly what ends up happening when you keep broken systems in place. So I've said before, your mayors of your big cities and stuff, they want to keep the slums in place because it'll create more broken homes, and then that will create more chance of those children being torn apart or DCFS coming in and taking them, and then it's more given to the state and the federal, and the state and the federal work together with that one, because that's part of what Kennedy and the president that followed him put in place. He also put in place the Mental Retardations Facilities Construction Act of 1963, which authorized federal support for construction of university-affiliated training facilities, mental disability research centers, and community service facilities for adults and children with mental disabilities. There's some like obsession with this stuff. It looks like on the surface that it's about helping those people, but really the best way you help those people, and it would be easy to clean up, they just don't want to do it, is you clean up your neighborhoods. That's always been an easy fix, getting drugs off the street and bringing the slums up to a good level, you know, where people are living in decent means. Those are easy things to fix. They keep it in place because it'll create more crisis. It disempowers you more. These are all things that I'm sorry to say, but JFK helped put in place. He put in place things. He put in place things that would take us into globalism. And Trump is not about globalism. So we need to let the democracy die. We need to see the truth about the Kennedys, and realize that if we truly want to get out of this, we need to not just trust everybody, especially if a Kennedy is only telling us partial truth and not talking about trafficking. We need to be able to see all the truth. I think that's what God wants from us, and that will elevate us to freedom.